Hey friends, welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas.
And I'm Melissa Trevathan.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in. Luke Smallbone is an Australian actor and one half of the four-time Grammy Award-winning pop duo For King and Country with his brother Joel. They have generated over 2 billion streams, 10 GMA Awards, 1 Billboard Music Award, and 1 American Music Award, as well as performances on Good Morning America, The View, The Today Show, The Tonight Show, and CMT Crossroads. Luke executive produced the 2016 independent film Priceless and the 2024 film Unsung Hero, a story about his family's immigration to America. Helen Smallbone grew up in Australia as the daughter of a Methodist minister and the youngest of 4 children. Trained as an occupational therapist, Helen's greatest desire was to serve God and become a wife and mother. At age 20, she married the love of her life, David Smallbone, and over the next 14 years, they added 7 children to their family. Their daughter, Rebecca St. James, who we love, and 2 of their sons, For King and Country stars Luke and Joe Smallbone, have collectively earned 5 Grammys. When not busy with her children and grandchildren, Helen is dedicated to sharing her passion and love for God with those around her. She is an author and the co-founder of Mom Life, a ministry of mothers uplifting mothers, and co-host of the Mom Life Community Podcast. Enjoy our conversation with the first mother and son we've had on our podcast, Luke and Helen Smallbone.
Y'all, we have been looking forward to this conversation for so long, and think
is that true? Can counselors lie?
No.
That's a great question.
Truth tellers.
We are truth tellers. Yes, we really have,
That's so good.
and have thought the world of both of you, known of you even before we got to see your movie, but to get to see an early screening was such a gift. To see the film, we're so excited about it.
Well, thank you for taking the time to watch it. It's one thing
Absolutely.
Joel and I have been joking lately, it's one thing to listen to a 3-minute song. It's another for people like, hey, we've got a movie that's going to be close to 2 hours for you to watch. Will you do that for us? It's a bigger
Yes.
commitment. So
Well,
thank you.
We're here to say it's well worth it.
Yes.
It's an incredible story, beautifully
Yes.
told story too, and we're excited to talk about it.
Great.
And there's not enough for families to do together anymore.
Yes.
And so for families to be able to enjoy the
A
movie
like that.
together.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the
just
hope.
the story of yours. Yes. So Unsung Hero, for anyone who hasn't heard of it yet, everybody needs to go see it. We are such fans. And it's your family story.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to sit with you all after experiencing that, because we feel like we have a leg up and we know y'all already when you don't really know us. But it opens with your move from Australia to the U.S. So
Yeah.
will you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you both?
I'll let Mom speak in greater detail in a second, but to set the stage a little bit. So Dad, we were he was a concert promoter in Australia, just for some context, living in Australia, and he brought a tour from America to Australia, and the tour didn't go very well, and we lost everything that we had as a family. We lost the house, we lost the car, we lost the life savings. And so Dad was looking for a fresh start for his career, and he thought it would be a good idea to move his 6 kids to the other side of the world. And then Mom, who was 6 months pregnant at the time, and that's what we did. But soon after we arrived in Nashville, Dad lost that job. And so we were sleeping on beds made out of clothes. We were didn't have any way for our little sister to be born in a hospital. Weren't always quite sure where the next meal was going to come from. Didn't have a car. And honestly, that's just the highlights, right? The list went on and on. And so I've actually spoken about that story and in some semblance of that story for pretty much since For King and Country's been going. And I've had a ton of people come up and they were like, hey, you guys should write a book. And the truth is, Joel and I were homeschooled, so we don't read or write very well, And,
That's a bit tough.
and so we thought maybe we could make a movie and said, that is a joke, Mom. But I went to a friend of mine and he was an LA producer and said, hey, I would love to work with you guys again. We worked on another film many years ago. And he said, hey, I pitched him the idea. I just said, hey, what do you think about this idea? My family story, there's something about it. It resonates with people, and it does something kind of unexplainable. And so anyway, we put it into development, and the heartbeat behind it is actually kind of what you guys do. I'm a big believer in family. I think that family is more important today than it ever has been in the history of the world, but yet we don't quite value it as much as we should. And if there was a thesis statement for the film, it's really this. Mother Teresa says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.
So much.
Helen, did you always know you wanted to have a big family?
Pretty much. Both David and I come from families of 4. So we're 3 boys and a girl. Both our families are the same. Both the oldest in each family are named David. So we had so many similarities within our family. And I think we both knew that 4 was probably where we were sort of aiming at. But David was and loves kids, loves the family. And so he was the one who kept on sort of saying, I always thought we talked about like 4 to 6, So number 5 came along, which we're very glad because that's Luke. And then after
Were there any that you weren't so glad about?
And then after Luke, he sort of said, but didn't we always say we were going to have 6? And so if I hadn't have had his encouragement, we probably would have stopped at 4. I feel like 4 is a great size family, actually. It's sort of one's just like mind-blowing because it changes your whole world.
Right.
2 felt pretty easy, like, it was a piece of cake. 3 is a jump, I will say, because you've only got 2 hands. You can only hold 2 kids. 3, you've got to trust. And then 4, once you've nailed 3, it sort of didn't seem a whole stack more. And the thing I think a lot of people forget about larger families is they stop when it's the hardest. Like they stop when, 3 probably is the jump. So they stop at 3 because it is the jump. And they don't realize that their older child's getting older. And the older child actually can make more contribution, that you're not so alone. And then it just, I don't know, keeps going. But one of the things that was really, really special to me was seeing older kids embracing younger kids, the younger kids. I remember when I had Libby, Daniel was 12, just on that borderline of maturing and changing into his, he's an adolescent, like coming into teenage years. And he just couldn't get enough of holding that baby.
Wow.
And it just melted my heart. Like sharing your younger kids with those older kids is just so beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
That is sure something. I don't know if we've ever even talked about that, but counseling over the years, I have felt like kids in big families are resilient and independent and responsible in really beautiful ways because I think they're just built-in opportunities at home.
And I think sometimes we underestimate what kids can do these days.
Oh,
we're spoiling them and we're sort of pandering to them. And I think a larger family, because there's so much more that needs to be done, it's more hands on deck, So it's sort of like when parents are pushed and you've got more responsibility, you share the responsibility with everybody, and it creates for greater cohesiveness within a family. It creates greater joy because you're together and you're doing things. I don't know. I loved it.
It's kind of like you're doing a family ropes course every day. Just a challenge.
In some cases, you're not too far off. Yeah.
Great.
Well, will you talk about that, Luke? What was it like growing up with 7 kids?
Look, I loved it. Courtney and I got 4 kids of our own. And ironically, it was funny seeing her mom talk about raising kids and birth order that she came from. But we have 3 boys and a girl, which is both her and dad came from 3 boys and a girl. And if you do the statistics, once you've had 3 of the same gender, to change is almost... It's like you're in the single percentage points of the likelihood of being able to change that. I don't know why, but apparently that's what I read. And, all statistics are perfectly accurate, right? But no, I love being in a big family. It's funny. Mom would say that she was only ever raising 3 kids at a time. And it's true because my older brothers were good to me. And for the most part, they they taught me everything that I needed to kind of know for the most part. Obviously, mom and dad are taking the chief responsibility.
Sure.
But like, if you're going to go hang out with friends and you're immature and you're going to get a little knock on the side saying, hey, man, if you want to hang with me, you got to do blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And it really taught me, how to be as a young boy. I was very grateful to my two older brothers, actually, in high school. My older brother, Ben, was a senior in high school. And Joel was, I think, 10th grade, and I was in the 7th grade, and they allowed me to go everywhere with them, which is very uncommon. And for the most part, that, you got to think. So by the time I'm getting to high school, I'm very well versed in all kind of the social things, and so it was a gift for me. I couldn't speak more highly of being in a big family. You have to. There are complications. There are pros and cons to everything. It's like buying a car. You go to Consumer Reports, and there's like the pros of this and the cons of this. The pros are that you're in a tribe, and you're a part of a team. The cons are, if you do feel left out, it's going to be difficult. And so you have to, and then that becomes a parenting thing, right? To make sure that you as a parent are identifying what your kids actually need and seeing the ones who might feel forgotten and then coming and reinforcing. But if that doesn't happen, you're going to have a kid that feels forgotten, or you're going to have a kid that's feeling like, I only get noticed if I achieve something. And those are obviously things that are, complicated long term, if that's what you always feel. So, but I really enjoyed it, and part of the reason why Courtney and I have 4, which nowadays people look at us and like, you have a ginormous family. I'm like, well, we do. Oh, I come from 7 though, and they're like, whoa, But I loved it. I loved it.
So good.
That's good to hear.
Helen, I understand the movie releases, I think, on your 49th wedding anniversary.
It does.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we love to ask you, just what have you learned about balancing marriage and parenting over the decades?
It's a good question, because I think it's so easy to get the balance out of whack. I see, because a mother's heart, I think, is always for her kids, probably first. And it's so easy for us to so focus on our kids that we forget our partner, who's our husband. And so you, as a woman, as a mum, as a wife, I think you've got to sit back every now and then and just say, where are my priorities? Where am I pouring my heart? Have I have this imbalance? Because the foundation of the family is the marriage. If you let that go and you put greater priority on the children and you're not investing in your marriage, then it's going to affect the children in ways that you can not conceive. So to me, you've always got to come back to that love relationship between your husband and the wife. And for David and me, part of what we would do to really, pour into that marriage relationship is that we would go away. Believe it or not, we've got a big family, but we managed to get away quite a lot just for a night or two, just on our own, just to sort of, I don't know, get back on the same page of just recognizing the love that we have for one another. And it just helped put in balance the whole family. But that the relationship to your husband as a wife has to be the priority.
Sissy, I am in 4 states this week.
Oh my goodness, David. What time zone are you in?
I don't know, but I hope it's close to bedtime, whatever time it is.
It's not.
Bummer. I do actually know what time it is. It's time for me to take my vitamins. My watch just reminded me.
Well, that is an important thing to remember each day.
You know what I don't have time for?
What?
Going to the store to get vitamins when I run out.
Me neither. With all our travel, I can't find time to get to the store and buy all the things I need in life, vitamins included.
Guess what? With Hiya, you don't have to.
I love Hiya and have them at my house for Henry.
As I've told you before, and I'll remind you again, they can work for big kids as well. I take them all the time. Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk growing kids and grown-ups like me should never eat.
That's why Hiya was created, the pediatrician-approved super-powered chewable vitamin.
Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide the full body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste they love.
Formulated with the help of nutritional experts, Hiya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including vitamin D, B12, C, zinc, folate, and many others to help support immunity, energy, brain function, mood, concentration, teeth, bones, and more.
See, I need all that.
Hiya is designed for kids of all ages, as David has proven, and sent straight to your door, so there is one less thing to worry about.
I love that they ship straight to your door. Parents and people who travel like us need one less thing to worry about.
We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/RBG. This deal is not available on their regular website.
Go to hiyahealth.com/RBG and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults.
Luke, the movie was a very honest portrayal of your family's struggle and how your parents lived a life of faith and trust in you all. How would you say that has informed your faith as a person, as a parent, and really even your life's work?
Yeah. No, look, it's funny. I've had a lot of people come up and be like, hey, man, you had to be terrified when you came to America, because, you guys were going through some really unique things. Or they say, or do you just not remember it? And I was like, oh, no, I remember all of it. And they're like, well, how did you feel, growing up in a household where there was seemingly so much uncertainty? And I think when I first started to get that question, I was a little bit puzzled. I was like, just because there's uncertainty doesn't necessarily mean I feel unloved. And so I think that there was a lot that was circumstantially going on. Mom and Dad were very honest with us about, maybe some of the struggles financially. I was keenly aware that we were poor. I was keenly aware that things were difficult. I was keenly aware that we were Australian living in America, because we talked differently. And, even though we, coming from Australia to America, obviously it's still English, there's nuanced cultural things that are happening that you just can't quite put your finger on. It's just like, you're like, I feel different. And, then you would have someone come up and talk to you about X, Y, Z. And you're like, I'm definitely different. You know what I mean? But I think that there's something about being very honest with your kids, but still covering them in the love that obviously Mom and Dad had for each other, but in their love for us. And so, I learned to mow lawns when I was 5 years old, which sounds fascinating. But I've always loved to mow lawns. I still love to mow lawns. I mowed my lawn the other day at the new house for the first time. But we were given a lot of trust. We were given a lot of opportunity. I think a lot of parents out there are struggling with their kids in the college ages of like, I just wish they would mature. And I think what I would say is, but if you start that maturation process at 14, 15, and you start giving them an unbelievable amount of opportunity and responsibility, man, by the time they're college age, they're pretty good at those things. But there is going to be an adjustment period of time if it's all brand new. And for us, right, wrong, or indifferent, we were given a lot of responsibility very, very young, and I think we were better for it. And I felt like we were working together. I mean, I remember going to do jobs and never really thinking about what I was getting paid for it. It's just what you did, You'd go rake leaves, and I hated raking leaves, but it's really important.
That's why you used to go and sit on the mower sometimes.
I would go talk to. I used to say I'd go talk to the owners because I wanted to make sure that we get the business, And I was like, if I'm 6 years old and I'm going to talk to the owners about their life stories, they're going to employ the 6-year-old again.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
That's true.
Anyway,
great point. Wow.
Those are great words.
Yes. And what a great reminder that whatever's going on in your family, the love is what does provide the stability.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. Thank you.
So, Helen, we'd love to ask first, how many grandchildren do you have? And also,
which are her favorites?
We can camp out there too.
And
we'd love to ask too, just what encouragement would you offer to grandparents and to parents who want to offer a legacy of faith?
I think your point, David, on legacy is huge. It's something that we don't think about or talk about. We're so sort of in the weeds doing that a lot of times we don't we don't think about the legacy that we're leaving. And I think that is huge. I think that's huge. And for me, my understanding and what I have poured my life into really is recognizing my children are my legacy. And now as a grandparent, I'm one step removed, and I'm a firm believer in he's going to raise his kids. I'm there when they need me, but he's going to raise his kids. But anyway, that's just for me because I did actually probably parent. I actively parent, hands-on parenting for 32 years. And homeschooled for 20 of those years. So, it's sort of like, okay, I'm done. That box
She's
has been
pretty
ticked.
happy to hand the baton.
I'd imagine
But
so.
the legacy still continues. And for me now, my primary role is to be there when I'm needed, in whatever capacity that looks like, to be there to support them either with some advice, wisdom, whatever you might put of being on this earth for
Perspective.
an objective opinion, whatever. And then the third is, and probably I think the most important, is to pray. David and I came from godly parents who supported us by praying, actively praying for our family and for us. And I know that we were protected in our very active years of crisscrossing America and traveling with Rebecca for her career. I know their prayers were vital for us, and I want to offer that same legacy to our children and our grandchildren. And so prayer has now become probably the greatest priority in stepping into more of a matriarchal grandparent role.
I have a friend who's in his 60s, and he still says with regularity, I'm the product of a praying grandmother. And it's exquisite to hear him talk about that relationship and that he lived his life knowing that she was praying over him at all times. So I love that you shared that. Thank you.
I think we can often underestimate the power of prayer in our families, with our children, in our home. I'm also a big believer, and it's sort of weird to make this statement knowing that the homes are Christian homes. But I sometimes think even as Christians, we rely too heavily upon outside influences, the church, schools, whatever, to be inputting our kids. The primary input comes from inside the home. So I'm a big believer in actually encouraging parents to invite Jesus into the home every day, in relationships, practicing forgiveness, giving grace, getting on with one another, loving each other well, praying with one another, covering one another covering our kids when they go to school, just praying for their needs, praying for, I don't know, just everyday normal things, so that the children grow up with an active faith, seeing an active faith being lived out in the home. And I think that's the best gift we can give to our kids. It's not just learning about Jesus, it's actually living with Jesus. And it's a big difference.
Yes, me too. And I'm going to add one more thing that I know that you're doing, because I got to watch it. 2 of Luke's kids came in with him, 2 boys, and the first question was about tomorrow's disco at school, and the boys immediately said, Nana, are you coming? And you said yes. So not only are you praying for them, but you're playing with them a lot. Have every confidence. Yes, I think grandparents have a unique ability to delight in kids, and that is so woven into the fabric of how they see themselves. And it was obvious you're doing that.
We currently have 15 and a half grandchildren. So we're in the middle
She's
of
there
this.
In high demand, let me tell you.
I bet.
In the middle of this year, we will have more grandkids than we have kids, like children and
in-laws,
spouses.
Wow. Well, this season of our podcast is about the ages and stages of parenting kids.
Yeah.
And we would love to know, have you each had a favorite stage of parenting? Well, yours haven't gone up very far yet.
I mean, maybe I'll go first because I don't really have much authority on this. I'm always like, parents, they're like, oh, well, can you give me some parenting advice? And I'm like, My oldest is 11. And I'm like, I'm always sitting there going, I want to know when parents have gotten their kids to 30, that's to me like when you've kind of done it. And the reason why 30 is because at that point, you know, statistically, they're probably married. Yes. They're probably well on their way, maybe with their first or second kid, and that the job is kind of done, right? So my perspective on my favorite age, you know, I'm not done that yet. But I will say and maybe this is just a political answer where it's like I'm not giving an answer, but I have so enjoyed. My kids are 11, 9, 6, and 3. And I really enjoy the dynamic of all of those ages right now. Meaning I probably, when they're 30, I'll go back. I really loved it when they were 8, 9, and 10, right. You know, maybe I'll come back. But what I love right now is with my 11 and 9-year-old, we can actually have intellectual conversation. There can be hey, this happened at school. Like, well, why do you think that happened? Or they'll talk about business stuff. They'll come up and be like, hey, you know, my oldest son's gotten this phrase of saying, Dad, you're getting scammed if he doesn't think it's a good deal. So he'll look at, you know, you go to the store and he'll be like, hey, that's $100. And he'll be like, it's a scam. Because to him, he thinks it's worth 60, you know? So you get to have those kind of discussions. My 6-year-old has a purity in spirit that he's shocked by evil. And that's a wonderful thing to actually sit there and a kid come up and be like, hey, he pushed me, or he's shocked by evil. There's something really powerful about those discussions. And then with my 3-year-old, you just get this innocence of just joy that is reckless. Their emotions are high. Their emotions are then they're low, and they're learning words. They're learning how to be. They're learning right and wrong. They're learning like what is Dad proud of and what is Dad not proud of. And what a joy that is to be able to shepherd that tender little spirit. And she's my only girl. So for me, I have a hard time looking at all of those ages currently. Mom may have a different opinion, but I have a hard time looking at those ages and going, I prefer one of the over the other, because I think that those ages actually fuel each other. Yes. I've got my 11-year-old saying, hey, well, you've got to treat Evie's heart differently than you're going to treat Phoenix's, who's 9. And so it's almost like cyclical in some cases for me. And I've really, really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For me, I enjoy a challenge. I don't think I've ever shied away from a challenge, particularly a challenge offered by a child.
That's the mother I know right there.
But I do know, so I'm not a baby mama. I mean, I see mamas that just love the babies and like, oh, I've got to hold a baby. Oh, I enjoy babies, but I'm not like,
she doesn't enjoy them that much.
I can let somebody else look after the babies. But a toddler, once they're walking and they're talking and they're exploring the world, oh my goodness, the whole mothering thing comes out in me. And I'm so very aware that probably the preschool ages are the foundation of a child's lifetime. And so those are the ages where that probably is my favorite stage, the preschoolers, because I'm aware you lay a strong foundation with preschoolers. You teach them how to be self-disciplined. You teach them how to be kind. You teach them how to think about others. Their innocence and their beauty and their love of life and the joy they exude of just seeing a new day, things that we as adults forget. You know, they remind us of, I don't know, just some pure joy, really. Yes. And you hone their personalities in those first 5 years. And it seems to me after that, once you've got a strong foundation laid, which is in those, I think those first 5 years, then really you're just doing tune-ups. I mean, you're just reminding, you're just like refining. But it's those first years that are so powerful. And so for me, it's always the little ones.
Beautiful.
I mean, I like them when they get older, but the joy of the older comes from then.
I have a question for you. Do you like me more or less now? Did you prefer me as a toddler? Or
I do like the friendship thing of as kids come into adulthood. I really enjoy that too. But again, I think the foundation
You're still going back to that? Yeah, I get it.
From when they were little.
I was teasing, but hey, that's fair.
Yes.
I'm realizing as I'm observing the two of you and loving your conversation with each other, we have never had a mother and son on the podcast.
So
And this is so fun.
This is the first interview we've done.
Oh,
just the two of us. Usually,
You've
we've done some
interviewed
others.
me, but
Yeah.
we've never been interviewed
Yeah.
as mother and son before. So
it is
thank you.
really
You all-
rich to watch
It
your
is.
relationship and
You
how
know, I
you
will.
interact.
My mom. I mean, I could get emotional if I speak about this too much. But all of us boys. There's 7 kids. And there's 5 boys in the middle. And if you are to see us 5 boys in the room and mom walks in, you will probably in the next 10 minutes see each one go up and give them a kiss. Give my mom a kiss. There is such reverence and honor for who she is. And man, at the end of the day, I am shaped. You know, she talked about those early toddler years. Those were the years where I was taught forgiveness, where I was taught right and wrong. I was taught fear the Lord. And those have become habitual. Those are the things I'm now teaching my kids because it was so strong. It was so life-changing. She once told me, I'll never forget this statement. You probably don't even remember me saying this, or you saying this to me, but when we were young, Mom used to have these great just little phrases. And she would say, there was one time when I was, I couldn't go to the baseball game because it was canceled because of weather, or a friend was coming and over to the house, or they got sick. And she said, "Luke, are you disappointed?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm disappointed." And she said, "It's good to learn how to overcome disappointment." And what I've gotten to see is, if you actually just look back at this movie, the movie illustrates that statement. It's filled with disappointment.
Yes.
But man, it's powerful and good when you learn how to overcome disappointment with the faithfulness of who Jesus is. And if you want your kids to walk in love with Jesus, they have to see that evidenced in the home. And the greatest, I think, gift that Mom gave me was I got to see evidence of that in the home.
Wow. You all.
We cannot say enough times in this interview, go see this movie,
Yes.
you all. It is so rich, so life-giving, and
Well, and there is no question that after hearing the two of you talk, everyone who's listening will want to see it. I mean, I want to watch it again just after encountering the two of you. And even to your great point before, when we were not recording yet, actually, we might have been recording, so we might even play it. But you were saying that it's so fun to do podcasts as an artist because people don't get to know you as well through your music. And I think, man, I feel like everybody's going to love everything you both do. Your entire family does that much more for hearing your hearts.
Oh,
so
you're
thank
sweet.
you.
Well, thank you. Well, yes, the film comes out April 26th, and it is, when they say it takes a village to raise a child, it takes like a frickin' city, a nation to promote a movie. So if anybody's out there and they want to go see it, please do, because it means a lot to us. And once again, I believe in the power of family. I believe in the power of motherhood. I think it shapes the next generation. And like I said, still my favorite quote, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And that's the hope for the film.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, what is the best parenting advice you've been given?
I don't necessarily, you guys live in the world of, academics and in a good way, and a lot of books, and I read a lot of books, but I have never really had a phrase or like a lesson that I can usually just grab hold of the sentence. It's usually the way that they live. It's usually the example in which, I think the thing that Mom touched on it before, but, my dad was a wonderful father. Now, not necessarily, but because he showed up to every one of my baseball games. Actually, he showed up for very few. But that's not my memory of him. My memory of him is how he loved my mom. And there was safety in that. And so I think when it comes to parenting, it sounds crazy to say, but, if you want to be a great parent, make sure that you have great love for your spouse, because they will emulate the love that is shown, So if you're, if you're a couple that yells a lot, the kids are probably going to yell a lot. You know what I mean? And so my point is less about necessarily a phrase, but it's more about an attitude of life. And if you can focus on that marriage, and man, it's a reminder to me. I got home late last night and I'm up first thing this morning, and I saw my wife for a few minutes, and I just thought to myself, I need to make sure later on that I really need to connect, because it's been It's been a minute, and then that's not saying that I'm getting it right. It's just me saying, oh, I need to make sure that there's time put there. You'd be amazed at how comfortable your kids feel if just that the marriage is working,
I think for me, I've endeavored throughout raising children, and even now with adult children, is keeping open communication. And sometimes that means being a good listener, not actually saying much, because when you're a listener, and kids feel the freedom to be able to talk to you without judgment, without criticism, with a level of openness. I don't know, when we're heard, but when we feel heard, it increases our strength of relationship. And so endeavoring to keep, I think that was a foundation of our family, because when David and I were in the midst of raising children, we still had, bench seats in the front of cars, and there was still a middle seat between mum and dad. And, that middle seat was the most vied for position in our van, because then we'd be close to mum and dad and we'd be able to talk. And we sometimes would go for Sunday afternoon drives. Yeah. And I've found the car to be the best place for just communicating. Sometimes to sit down, and I hear of parents who take kids out for a meal and stuff like that. I think that's great. But a lot of times just sitting across a table from somebody is actually a little intimidating.
Yeah.
You know what I heard someone say?
With people, where you're focused on something else, but you're just with somebody, huge.
Someone said to me just the other day, this week, I think I was doing something, and they said, "Oh, most of parenting never takes place across from each other; it takes place side by side."
Yeah.
I thought that was a fascinating statement.
Yes.
So it's in the car, it's working on the project, it's doing something else. Because then someone told me that a lot of humans are like clams. Sometimes they're not open. But when they're open, you got to find those moments that they're open. I think for kids, you got to find those moments that they're open. And when they're open, you can yes pour in. But if they're not open, it's not a whole lot you can do in some cases.
Yes. Y'all, thank you. This really has been such a rich conversation. So excited for folks to encounter this film.
And we can't thank you both enough just for giving us your time and the honesty that is evident in conversation with you and is translated through this movie that I can't wait for folks to experience.
Hey, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible.
Amanda Young, our operations manager.
Chris Starrett, our engineer and producer.
Our management team at KCH.
And we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.